age. So it doesn't matter what issue we are talking about. For example, we are living in a more connected world, but also people are feeling more lonely. We have more technologies, more measures in place to curb to try to reverse global climate change, and yet, according to the latest data discussions in Dubai during the UN climate conference, the global environment is getting worse. So, so, um, so we are really living in the age of a paradox uh, along multiple fronts, technologically, socially, politically, and technologically. So where do we go from here to address those paradoxical trends? So I would like to end my idea to share three thoughts. Again, this is some of my ongoing work, and then I would like to hear what are the two discussants have to say, and then hear from you. We can have a productive conversation. So the three ideas I'm going to share is we need more detailed tetratic analysis of technological innovation. Secondly, we need to embrace ethics in everything we are doing or thinking about, especially quantum ethics. Last but not least, we need that's the main topic of my talk. I'm advocating taking a convergence approach to think about digital twin ethics. Again, each of these topics are pretty big. I can only give you a synoptic overview. So first, the theoretic analysis of technological innovation is thinking about technology not in the traditional linear way, either or, but we have to think both. And this idea was inspired by the Canadian communication theorist Marshall McLuhan. He argued for any new technologies, any new media innovations, it will enhance our capabilities, at the same time obsolete something we already done. Also, simultaneously retrieve all the practices that we abandoned long time ago. But if we are not careful, it will quickly reverse itself into the opposite of what we have intended. So I really consider these four letters, for lack of a better analogy, as the DNA of technological innovation. Moving forward to understand any new technology, including digital twin, we have to think of the E, RV, and RT, and O, so that we can have a more holistic understanding. And also most recently, I have been trying to push the quantum turn for geospatial technology in the society. What do I mean by that? The quantum turn in for GI science has three sort of implications as a representational model, as a technology and tools. But today I'm going to focus on the third one, quantum really as ethical practices. So, but in order to do that, we have to move away from Newtonian conceptualization of human as particles, but instead thinking human as the quantum wave function. So in terms of embracing quantum ethics, we needed to think about the uncertainty, because quantum mechanics is a probabilistic world, not a determinist world. And then we need to think about, inspired by quantum physicists' idea of non-locality and connectivity, we needed to think about connectedness and interdependence, and also that will entail a new ethics of relationships. And then the third, because the quantum thinking argues we cannot separate the observer from the observed, so we needed to be keen in terms of observer effects and the subjectivity. And that's the ethics of perception, the reality, and the human subjectivity is really crucial. last but not least, based upon quantum superposition and multivariance, and that's the new ethical position that we have to have a pluralistic view of what a reality really is. I think those quantum fundamental ideas based upon quantum mechanics could guide us to navigate through to have a more holistic view, to transcend, to move beyond the either or world, but think about both. Just like over 120 years ago, physicists were debating the property of a light, whether it's a particle or wave. It's it's not either or. To understand the fundamental property of light, you have to conceive it both, the duality of both as a particle and a wave. I think that's kind of that kind of holistic view of reality is what needed in this polarizing time. And in this regard, I'm working with my friend and colleague Jack Liu at Michigan State, to really link his matter coupling and the sustainability framework with the quantum ethics and quantum thinking. If you are interested in this topic, I would be happy to talk to you in a little bit more detail. So last, let me wrap things up toward in terms of the ethics of framework. To knit together all these different elements, we need to take our convergence approach. When I say convergence approach, I mean two things: technological convergence, meaning that all these technology are already mentioned in the context of digital twins related to AI, Internet of Things, new visualization technology, and GIS, and they are all converging. Virtual reality, augmented reality, social media, all that are converging. So we have to think of all these technological innovations holistically. But in today's talk, in the concluding section, I really would like to argue convergence as a research practice and the methodology. So with that in mind, I think the digital ethics framework should embrace these six aspects: new ethical principles and values, legal regulatory framework, new standards and certification, oversight and monitoring, public engagement, participation, and also international cooperation. So so that also means that we need to bring in not only industry, not only academia, but also work with the policymakers and industry partners. So an ethical digital technology should embrace all these six elements: a transdisciplinary outlook, stakeholder synergy, think more deeply about human-machine partnership, and provide all the needed oversight, monitoring, and evaluation, and seek local global integration. And last but not least, as educators, we should also need to think synergy among our research, education, and outreach efforts. So I want to leave with you with Sherry Turkle's work, because I have been, throughout my career on this topic, I have been a big fan of work. Think about it. Back in 1984, that's almost 40 years ago, she wrote a book, Second Self. Then later on, she wrote Alone, Together, and the Reclaiming Conversation. And most recently, she published the Apathy Diary. I think her entire career trajectory has been thinking about the ethical issues, how we as humans should, engage the ethical use of technology, especially Alone Together. The subtitle of that book was she asked the intriguing question why we are expecting more from technology and less from our fellow human beings. So with that in mind, I recently got a chance to read David Brooks. He occasionally still a regular contributor to the PBS NewsCover. He wrote a book, lots of books, but his most recent book is How to Know a Person and the Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. I do believe that moving forward to end all the human misery, to really to make the world a better place, we should not rely on technology alone. We obviously need technology, but we should have a human focus. And that human focus is to improve human relationship, to be more empathetic. And again, Sherry Turkle's solution is we need to reclaim a meaningful conversation between human beings in the digital age. And in that way, we can be more empathetic to other people's views, other people's situation. In that way, we can recalibrate our own position toward other fellow human beings, and then make whatever technology tools we are using to make this world a better place. I think I will stop right there. I will leave my my final thought is with this code. It's not our ignorance that will kill us, but our arrogance will. And hopefully, by embracing this convergence framework, thinking about ethical issues of digital twin, we will be more humble, less arrogant. 140.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dansu. Very good on time. Thank you. I mean, it reminds me my doctor as a PG student that all the enlightening and conversations has with Dansu and very lightning. I mean, helping to thinking more deeper about digital twins and also its ethical concerns. Thank you for the convergent approach. Dr. Peter Darch, who is a social professor at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign School of Information Science. His research interest lies in how technological and social factors impact scientific research organization and conduct. He uses longitudinal ethnographical studies of multidisciplinary scientific projects to understand the interplay between collaboration contexts, information in structure, and the scientists' data practices. Dr. Darch has published his work in various journals, including the Journal of Association for Information Science and Technology, International Journal on Digital Labyrinths, and the Philosophical Transactions of Royal Society A. Now, let's welcome Dr. Peter Darch of his presentation on twins are people, embedding ethics in the digital twins infrastructure. Peter, now is all yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just try and share my screen now. Okay. I think this is about right. No, that's yeah. Sorry. Okay, great. So I go back to the beginning. So thank you very much for the introduction. Yeah, as was mentioned, I'm a social scientist. And really, I'm going to be focusing really on the people who underlie digital twins, really focus on the people who do the work necessary to establish and operate and maintain digital twins, and really think about their role in shaping the ethical outcomes of digital twins. So certainly a lot of the issues, the ethical issues surrounding digital twins are ethical issues that have arisen already and have already been studied in a lot of data science. So for instance, on the left is a book about bias and discrimination and how, for instance, AI systems can result in disparate incomes, unfair disparate outcomes, unfair outcomes for particular groups of people based on their membership of groups. And also as well, on the right, the book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, really addresses issues around not just surveillance and privacy, but also thinking about the implications for human autonomy and human decision-making. And certainly the ethical issues with digital twins are very much an intensification, a continuation, but also an intensification of existing issues in data science. As well, data science has also disrupted very traditional notions of what research ethics are, how we interact with people who are represented in or who are the subjects of data that are used in digital twins, but also as well how it affects the people who are subjected to the outcomes of decisions that might be made using digital twins. So we've already heard quite a lot about some of the key concerns around digital twins, for instance, issues around privacy and surveillance, issues around autonomy, as well, the limits of data and models. What can we learn from these data and models? What do they not show? And how do we take care in interpreting the outcomes of digital twins analyses? Issues of bias and discrimination. So this can mean, for instance, particular groups, particular geographic locations might be underrepresented in data sets or overrepresented in data sets. Data quality may vary as well according to different groups of people, different communities, which again can affect how well digital twins work for these different groups of people. There's also issues as well around the consent of the people if we're using human subjects data, the consent of those impacted by digital twins, decision making, and as well sort of going beyond perhaps what we think of as westernized notions of consent. Also issues around data sovereignty and, for instance, indigenous data sovereignty. And also many other issues besides. What underlie or what cut across all of these issues are issues of power. It's not just thinking about what happens when a digital twin is being built and in operation and what the effects might be, but also thinking about who is actually who are getting to use digital twins and for what purposes, whose interests count, whose voices count, and who is marginalized and excluded. And also cutting across a lot of these issues are concerns around accountability and transparency as well. Clearly, when this is common again across data science, but the use of data sets, the use of models, very often the outputs of digital twins may seem just black boxed, that people may be subjected to decision making or impacts of digital twins. But not really able to hold, not really being able to understand why they're being affected the way they are, not being able to hold anybody accountable if they feel they're being negatively impacted or unfairly impacted. Of course, these particular harms are intensified because very often, digital twins will involve working across multiple boundaries, perhaps studying whole Earth digital twin, for instance, will involve transferring data across national and cultural boundaries, as well working across organizational, institutional boundaries, whether that be between university and industry or government, or as well within the universities as well, working across different disciplines. And so that really makes these ethical concerns far more intricate, far messier. And as well, there's also the thorny question of how can we actually address ethical issues while preserving the many potential benefits of digital twins, because they are being, they may be established to solve urgent and important questions. And so we don't want to intervene in the ethics of digital twins in such a way that would really cause digital twins work to grind to a halt, and we can't actually access any of the benefits of digital twins. Of course, as technology ethics more generally, this isn't just in relation to digital twins, but really any form of technical system. This is clearly a very oversimplified schematic of the development life cycle. And very often the real problem is that we only become aware of ethical issues once the system's been deployed in the real world. I talked about algorithmic bias, for instance. Most of the studies that expose algorithmic bias are conducted on, for instance, already commercially available facial recognition algorithms, or on Google, systems that are already being used and already affecting people for good and for ill in the real world. And that's really a big challenge. So the challenge really is, how can we move further upstream and get stakeholders such as designers, funding agencies, the institutions that may, or organizations that may want to develop and deploy digital twins, thinking about ethics and values further upstream. Now, this is very challenging. The Collingridge dilemma refers to the challenge of really embedding ethics early on in the development of any technology. It's clearly much easier to change a system earlier on in its development life cycle, when it exists purely on paper, or being designed, whereas once it's been deployed in the real world, it makes it much more difficult to actually make any kind of change, make any sort of intervention. But the paradox is that, unfortunately, we may only become fully aware of the real world impact of a system much later on in the life cycle, once it's been deployed in the real world. But there are clearly many opportunities, I think, to with digital twins actually to get upstream. As I said already, many of we can already anticipate a lot of the ethical challenges. They're already being studied in the context of other areas of data science, other systems. And so we can certainly leverage those insights and those approaches to inform our thinking around digital twins and what we want them to do and what we don't want them to do. And as well, digital twins is still very much a nascent field. So there is a lot of opportunity to get in early on around the conversations. So how do we actually get a handle on intervening in the ethics of digital twins? This slide was really kind of stimulated by a talk that I saw, point made by a talk by Michael Goodchild, who I see is actually on the seminar today, who really suggests that the term digital twin is potentially misleading, that it actually suggests objectivity, that the term twin suggests accuracy, it's a complete representation, but also as well that the digital part of the term, and also a lot of the discourse around digital twins, really suggests that the system is very much an automated processing, decision-making system, and this in turn, the term digital twin and a lot of the rhetoric around digital twins could then have implications for trust in digital twins, that people may end up placing too much faith in them, or not really being aware of the key limitations and ethical implications. And what I want to emphasize as well, that digital twins may not be either, and also that really it's very, very important that instead of just looking on the surface, that we really look under the hood, that a digital twin is or will be made up of a very complex array, not only of technical components, but also a lot of human components as well. And that's really where I want to sort of go further. So a term that I've used in my work, and others who've studied social systems of technology, use the term knowledge infrastructures. So, digital twin pretty much stands on the shoulders of others. The model or the models that underlie digital twins aren't going to necessarily be developed from scratch, but instead they may be taken from other models, repurposed. Different, a model may be built from multiple other by integrating multiple other models, and as well the data as well may not be simply being collected for the purpose of the digital twin, but instead, a single digital twin may well integrate multiple different data from a variety of different sources, collected in very different contexts, subjected to very different processes. And so, we really need to think about how these data are made available, how they shape what the digital twin does, what it can know, and what its impact is. And also as well, that actually the ethical issues of digital twins or of a particular digital twin will in turn be impacted by ethical issues that arise in the handling of the underlying data sets or in the various components that may be integrated into the single model. And so digital twins rest on underlying knowledge infrastructures. When people think of infrastructure, very often they just think of large-scale engineered systems like roads. But in social sciences, we think of infrastructures as a much messier concept or much messier network of many human and non-human components that don't necessarily work seamlessly together, but require ongoing maintenance and care. And you might see in this picture, on the surface, all may appear digital, very straightforward, and the operation may seem very smooth, but actually the underlying infrastructure is anything but. And that's where a lot of the ethical issues, but also the opportunities for addressing ethical issues come into play. So, components of knowledge infrastructures involve not only instruments and sensors collecting the data, computers, the code used to process data, academic literature, for instance, that people building models may use to find their forebears of those models, repositories that make data and code available, the various classification and metadata schema that are used to organize these repositories, standards and policies, and as well, what I really want to emphasize is the human infrastructure, the people, the training, their skills, how they're socialized, what training they have in ethics as well, and much more besides. So for instance, I'm not going to go through this, but a single data set passes through many hands. Lots of people may handle the data set through different stages. These people are operating in various institutional contexts. They take action at each of these different stages, and each of these actions in turn can have ethical implications. People are working within context where their actions may be shaped by the training they have available to them, the pressures that they're under, their career pressures, for instance, and other resources available to them at the time, various organizational policies and laws. And so the issue of digital twins ethics is very much a problem of many hands. The outcomes are affected by all of these different people and institutions operating in different ways, not just about the policies and the laws, and the management decision-making, but also thinking about the day-to-day actions of the very many people that combined make up digital, that will build and operate the digital twins. So you can't really solve issues simply by relying on technical fixes alone. Technical fixes have to be built and implemented by people. And as well, we can't solve issues simply by relying on a small number of people, one person or a small team of people within an organization. That it really is about lots of different people. So what I want to do quickly now is just share some findings from a case study that I've been working on, the Institute for Geospatial Understanding, through an integrated discovery environment. So I'm the data ethics lead on that. It's a 5-year NSF project. And it's really about using geospatial data to address various different challenges in sustainability, through integrating, through accessing and integrating and analyzing lots of data sets. My team has been conducting a study of one particular group of researchers who study aging dam infrastructure, both what dams are at risk of failing within the US, but also what their social, economic, and other consequences might be if they fail. So we've been doing sort of detailed qualitative studies of these researchers. So these are the two doctoral students who work with me. I'll focus more on Ivan's work, he's been conducting a lot of interviews and observation of people that work in the Aging Dams team to understand their existing work practices, but also to identify opportunities for intervention in their day-to-day work, and then using those findings to formulate and test tools to support best practice. Some of his key findings is that it's very, very challenging, and there's multiple different challenges. The very first stage of challenge is really how to actually engage the people that work with the Aging Dams team. but then also identifying where to intervene, formulating the interventions, and then measuring the progress. So I'll quickly just talk about one's just very quickly in the next 30 seconds he's found that a lot of the researchers are very aware of and concerned with ethical issues, but at the same time they're very reluctant sometimes to get involved in integrating various measures into their day-to-day work. They're concerned about excessive bureaucratic burden that may slow down their progress towards writing papers, getting their PhDs, that kind of thing. Very often as well, they've been socialized into a very, computer science mindset. Their training may not have covered ethics really, and so they have very much a two cultures mindset, that they're there to do the technical issues, and that the ethics is very much the job of social scientists, philosophers, and it's for somebody else to do. And as well, they also like to delegate the responsibility to others. So if they're using data sets that have been produced by other organizations, then they will assume and think that it's the responsibility of those organizations to build in ethical protections. And so, been looking at how and where to intervene, and trialing existing tools and how to adapt them. I'm running out of time. So quickly, the overall conclusion is that there are many opportunities to address ethical issues early in the life cycle of digital twins. The digital twins rely on knowledge infrastructures, but that these infrastructures are messy and complex, involving many different people, technologies, and processes. And actually, the discourse around digital twins and even the term digital twin can obscure these, and that's really a risk if we want to address ethical issues properly. So the ethics issues are the product of many hands, and addressing these issues require multiple ongoing solutions, engaging and focusing on people as much as technology. But also addressing the issues requires overcoming many thorny social challenges. And so all of these different types of measures are required. So I think I'll wrap up now. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Darch. I really enjoy your practical experience from IGAP, but also sharing your concerns ethical concerns from like this human power perspective. So we'll save all the questions to the end, and if you have any questions, feel free to type in the meeting chat. So we'll summarize it and ask all the keynote and the panelists to the end. So now let's move on. I'll introducing the next panelist, Dr. Junwon Kim, who is assistant professor in the Department of Geography at Virginia Tech, who leads the Smart City for Good Research Lab. His lab focuses on using smart city technologies to address urban, social, and environmental issues. His research spans human mobility, environmental health, geospatial data science, and geospatial data privacy and ethics. Kim's work is published in various journals, including the Annals. He also has received multiple awards, such as AEG Health and Medical Geography Specialties Peter Gold Award and the John Oldland Award. So now let's move to Dr. Junwon, who will give a talk on digital twins for understudied cities, small and medium-sized cities in the United States. Now, Junwon, now it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Can you see the PowerPoint right now?
Yes, can see you and
Okay.
also hear you clearly.
Yes, okay. And then I have about 15 minutes, right?
No, you have a 15 minutes, sorry.
15, yeah, 15, right? 15, right? Okay, good. So, hello everyone. My name is Junwon Kim, and I'm an assistant professor at the Department of Geography at Virginia Tech. And thank you, Dr. Sui and Dr. Darch, for providing wonderful insights into the ethics issues in digital twins. And my presentation is particularly focused on some kind of my recent empirical studies that are related to some kind of data issues, digital divide issues related to the digital twins, particularly focusing on rural towns and small and medium-sized cities in the United States, where the researchers have relatively little paid attention to yet so far compared to other big cities such as Washington, D.C., Boston, or Los Angeles and New York City. So as Dr. Zhao kindly introduced my name is John Kim, and my research is about human mobility and environmental health issues by using geospatial data science methods. And Smart Cities for Good is a research lab that I am organizing. And today's presentation have two parts. The first part is particularly focusing on the street view images, and then disparity issues in street view images, a case study of Google Street View images. The reason I introduced this topic is because street view images have a good potential to build a high accuracy digital twin models. But I argue that there is some methodological limitations in street view images, particularly when we focus on the small rural towns or small and medium-sized cities in the United States. And then second part, I particularly focus on geographic biases in the overall AI training data, particularly focusing on the case of study of ChatGPT. This may not closely related to the digital twins, but my argument is that since those kind of large language model or AI model is based on the existing data they trained based on the existing data on website or other places, but we found some kind of geographic biases in the potentially geographic biases over the AI training data, which leads to some inaccuracy or disparity in the performance of generative AI such as ChatGPT. And this might provide us some ethical implications when we build and then when we work on digital twin models, particularly focused on small and medium-sized cities and rural towns, which have researchers paid relatively less attention to so far. So you probably already know, experience the street view images. It shows the, some landscape view, the eye-level perspective on the built and natural environments of cities. And mostly, these street view images are captured by these vehicles, particularly Google's, and that's this special camera mounted on a Google vehicle. And then these street view images have a great potential use for data sources for building accurate and precise digital twin models, because thanks to recent advances in AI technologies, particularly deep learning-based computer vision models, geospatial data science, as well as street view images can be a good potential data sources for building digital twin models that accurately, precisely represent the real world. So based on the assumption, the definition that digital twin aims to replicate the real world in an accurate way and in a precise way, I argue that these street view images can be a useful sources. For example, by using this kind of street view images, you can identify some green spaces, natural environments from the images, and also some kind of built environmental features such as bus shelters or a traffic sign, etc. However, when we think about this availability of street view images, we can easily also find that the empirical studies show that these studies largely used on commercial images, such as Google Maps. For example, this graph shows published paper from Kim et al. At Computers, Environment, and Urban Systems, showing that the growing number of studies are largely relying on Google Street View images. And another, minor review paper published by Blizaki and Ito shows that most of the Street View images used by researchers are largely rely on commercial images such as Google, Baidu, and Tencent. So of course, you know that Baidu and Tencent are not available in the United States. So if we think about that, most of the Street View images are largely based on the commercial Street View or commercial images. And then I'd like to argue that there are some limitations of these commercial Street View images. First of all, it is a car-oriented perspective. To expedite the data collection process, most of these commercial companies utilize vehicles, and the vehicles only can drive on street, and then it cannot necessarily capture the perspectives from pedestrians on the sidewalks where vehicles cannot access. And also related to that, there might be some low spatial coverage because vehicles cannot drive on blind spots in cities such as parks or trails. And then also another important thing is there can be some temporal variability, especially when you think about the small and rural towns in the United States, because these kind of images are largely managed by commercial companies. And then although they try to regularly visit those kind of remote towns to collect the updated data, but I found that for the rural area or remote area in small and medium-sized cities, those commercial companies do not necessarily send vehicles often, so that there might be some kind of outdated images available for street view, commercial street view images. So in this slide, previous studies, some kind of investigate this spatial coverage and temporal variability of Google Street View images. However, I found there are some gaps in the previous studies, which is that there has been limited understanding of the methodological issues for small and medium-sized United States cities, and then also previous studies largely focus on place-based approach and then not considering the people-based approach, indicating that when we evaluate this data availability, we want to see consider people's actual daily trajectory activity and activity travel space when we evaluate the availability of these commercial street view images. So therefore, the goal of this part 1 is to evaluate the spatial coverage and temporal variability of Google Street View images, particularly focusing on 45 small and medium-sized cities in the United States. And then this is a hypothetical scenario that we assume that people want, we would like to estimate the individual's green space exposure in their trajectories by using street view images on their walk to home to work trajectory. And then we focus on 45 small and medium-sized cities, and then we use the commute data, trajectory data, and simulate the accurate trajectory based on this census available data. And then first we assess the spatial coverage by considering dividing the number of available Google Street View images by total number of locations on their commute trajectory, and then multiplying by 100. And also we compute the temporal variability by considering the timestamps. How much is the time range over the timestamps of images along a person's walk-based home to work trajectory. So the result shows that interestingly, considering 95 as a threshold for adequate Google Street View image spatial coverage, 44% of our sample do not have adequate coverage of Google Street View images, indicating the limited spatial coverage. And this may lead to some issues related to potential uncertainties and threats to validity and reliability of studies that try to use these kind of commercial Street View images to build digital twin models or other studies. And also for the temporal variability, we found that only about 10% of our samples have Google Street View images taken within a 12-month span. So in other words, on average, the temporal variation is about 7 years, which indicating a significant amount of temporal variations of timestamps of Street View images. So, since the urban landscape may change substantially within 7 years, so this kind of temporal variation might be limited, pose serious methodological issues for digital twin studies and etc. And then we also found even within the small and medium-sized cities, 45 cities, there are some kind of regional differences. For example, when it comes to spatial coverage score, some cities such as Erie and Cedar Falls, Waterloo in Iowa is the largest. And then regarding the temporal variability level, the difference between Lewiston and the Cedar Falls, Waterloo is the largest, which is about 9 years. Then what would be the implications of my finding for digital twin studies? I found that commercial Street View images have a low spatial coverage and high temporal variability, particularly when you focus on small and medium-sized cities and rural towns in the United States. And considering efforts in building successful digital twin models, these limitations can be particularly serious for rural towns and small and medium-sized cities in the United States, which has been already suffered from limited public policy resources for decades. Therefore, the potential solutions include collecting Street View images with low-cost cameras or use some kind of crowdsourced data. So for example, one of the solution is using some kind of user-based crowdsourced Street View images, such as Mapillary. And then this is widely used by researchers, but at the same time, I argue that this kind of volunteered geographic information still can be limited in rural towns and small and medium-sized cities, because not that many people try to share their images with researchers. So our research group tries to suggest more straightforward solution, which is let's collect original up-to-date street view images by researchers or by policymakers such as local NPOs with a low-cost camera and a mobility scooter. So for example, this is a video. I'm not sure whether you can see the video. So you can see that this is a mobility scooter that we can drive on sidewalks legally, because I cannot drive golf cart on sidewalk. It is not allowable. But this kind of mobility scooter, and you can see there's a camera, a GoPro camera, a low-cost but high-quality camera attached here. So which gives us some kind of a effective tool to collect high-quality street view images on the sidewalks from the pedestrian perspective, not only in the sidewalks, but also trails and parks, so that we can have a high quality, precise data, street level view images data. And then during the summer, our research group were able to do some pilot studies, successfully do the pilot study by focusing on Blacksburg as a case study area. So, and then you might wonder, then this might relate to some kind of privacy concerns. So we all, because people do not like to get collected by their street view images. So to mitigate that concern, we conducted some kind of empirical studies by focusing on about 400 people living in the United States through the online survey. And then we found actually there's a limited private concern related to the acceptance of this data collection of street view images. And then we found a fairly high approval rate among the people this policy that collects street view images by camera on sidewalks. And then the next part of today's presentation, I try to focus on some kind of geographic biases in the overall AI training data, particularly focusing on case study of ChatGPT. And I assume that you all have experience using ChatGPT at least one time throughout this year. So, and it is widely known that this kind of generative AI has some kind of potential biases issues. So, for example, one study found there's a potential political biases in ChatGPT's responses by investigating ChatGPT's response to 15 different political orientation tests. And another study that I conducted with my colleagues in earlier this year, we focus on how the ChatGPT understands the transportation issues and solutions in the United States. So overall, ChatGPT's understanding of transportation issues in the United States are overlined with our transportation researchers' findings, but it shows some kind of limited understanding of local specific answers. So, but amid of this exchange of opinions, it is crucial to further validate generative AI's information performance in context beyond the legal, education, transportation, and political sectors. So we'd like to, I have a simple question about what are the limitations, such as biases and inaccuracies in ChatGPT, particularly focusing on environmental justice issues over the United States. Then why we focus on the environmental justice issue? Because it is one of the crucial policy goals, as well as it shows the geographic differences in environmental justice issues across regions. For example, air pollution might be a concern in one country, but not in another. So by investigating this environmental justice issue, we can examine the geographic aspects of ChatGPT's or generative AI's responses. So we use the API of OpenAI's API to mitigate some kind of reproducibility and replicability issues related to sending multiple prompts to ChatGPT. And then we use the default parameters. And what we did is we asked about environmental justice issues of all 3,108 counties in the United States mainland. So this is some kind of prompt. So it took about 20 to 30 seconds to retrieve the answer from ChatGPT. And then we found that out of 3,000 counties, only 70% of counties we can get some local specific answer. For example, as you can see, Los Angeles County, air quality and pollution, access to healthy food, and energy insecurity, etc. With these kind of local specific answers, of course we do not know whether this is actually true or not, but at least we can get some local specific answer from ChatGPT only for 515 counties. But for the majority of counties, such as 200,500 counties, ChatGPT does not able to give us some a local specific answer by saying that, I'm sorry, but it seems there is not enough available and specific information on environmental justice issue directly related to King County, Texas, which is small county in the Texas, and also North Dakota, Adams County, similar thing. They mentioned that they do not have information about this, indicating that ChatGPT's inability to provide local specific answers for this kind of a low density area. So this map shows counties. The blue color indicates counties that were able to get some ChatGPT local specific answer from ChatGPT. The red color indicates those counties that do not receive a local specific answer from ChatGPT. And then we can also see some kind of geographic pattern related to the population. So you can see that these Midwest and the rural states have a higher population of people who live in counties that do not get local specific responses from ChatGPT. But otherwise, this kind of California, New York, it has a low population. And then we also, this is the last slide, we also do some binary logistic regression to see whether there is some kind of social demographic disparities. And we found that, for more rural and poorer counties have a higher chance of not receiving local specific responses from ChatGPT compared to more urban and wealthier counties, which hinting at the geographical biases in training data or etc. So we are arguing there are some serious limitations, particularly in generative AI, for particular focus on small and medium-sized cities and rural counties. And then although we do not able to directly investigate the issue, but we speculate that is because of limited training data sources, disparity in training data between large cities versus small cities, which probably lead to some kind of issues and ethical concerns when we think about building the digital twin, because those kind of existing data will be very helpful to build a high accuracy, precise digital twin, but we can see there is some kind of digital divide in those kind of training data set. And then this is not a new thing, because, for example, in the recent papers, 2014 paper published in Annals, it shows that there is some kind of geographically uneven coverage of Wikipedia, indicating that certain area in area has a higher a number of Wikipedia pages. So we need to consider about this kind of geographic biases in digital twin and the training data. So again, we recommend the researchers be mindful of these kind of geographic biases in ChatGPT's and generative AI training data. And these are two papers published by our moderator, Dr. Zhao, is also a helpful guide to think about this issue more. So
Jingfang, I think we won't have time to go over your 50
yes,
slides.
let me just
we should wrap up here.
Yes, so thank you very much for your attention. Yes.
Yeah, Paul, you are muted.
Thank you so much, Jingwang. I really enjoy how you design your empirical study and dive into this so important question about geographical bias. No matter in ChatGPT, generative AI, or Google Street images. Now let's open the floor to every panelist and keynote. I know, Dan, you need to leave in 10 minutes. I already noticed there are several questions specifically designed for you. So Dan, do you want to answer the questions or?
Yeah. Sure, I would be happy to answer the question. I apologize that I have a 2:30 meeting that I tried my best, but I cannot reschedule because of people are taking off for the holidays. So can you? I have not get a chance to read the questions. So
sure, definitely. I can read it out to all the panelists and also the audience. So the first question is it's for you, Dan. It's the ethical aspects you introduced include a broader spectrum. Could you share your view about how ethics might contribute to the trust and the confidence of using digital twins? And there are some follow-up questions, like, but it was to all the panelists. There are some philosophical components in everyone's presentation. We understand this concept of digital twin have been defined by many sources. It would be really nice to hear from you, your own one sentence interpretation about what is digital twins. A follow up with from Wendy, who asked a question about people say that digital twins are just the complex digital models with a new name. Could you agree or disagree with this kind of saying? So there are a couple of questions there. One is about then your specific view about the trust and confidence of using digital twin, and then it's about your one sentence definition, and also could you share us a little bit about what do you think about the digital twin? It's just a complex digital model with new name. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me start with the first one. By the way, are those questions in the chat room or send you individually? Because I did not see those questions.
Oh, they're in the chat room.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
you should be able to access.
So let me and try to answer the first question. I think you know, be more sensitive to the ethical dimension will be very helpful to build the public trust, and also we needed to be mindful to open the transparency, you know, about, you know, that will be helpful to address some of the bias concerns. But here's the big picture, you know, because of this is related more sort of to the reproducibility crisis. You know, this is an issue that you know, during my NSF days has been widely discussed among senior management at the federal funding agency, that according to various polls, the general public really have the trust in science has declined sharply. You know, that's part of the reason was, of course, the media coverage on the so-called reproducibility crisis. But I think regardless of what's the reason, I think the scientific community needs to be to do a little bit of soul searching, to think about those issues. You know, to I'm a firm believer to still make a science to be a public good. You know, because the ethics issue is about doing the right thing for the right reason at the right place, the right time for the right people. So we, you know, the better we can improve and answer those questions, I think the more stronger the public can understand, and the support we can gain. But let me stop there. I know Peter's hand is up, but maybe he has a lot more to say on these questions.
Peter, is yours.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a really interesting question, and I just wanted to make the point as well that it's not just about sort of you know, whether or not there are ethical issues, and then but it's also as I mentioned in my presentation, issues of power very much come into play here. It's not just a question of whether there are ethical issues, but it's also an issue about who is experiencing ethical harms, whether those people who experience ethical harms are in a position to really you know, have a voice to say that they're being harmed, and then also have the ability to affect change. And as well, it's also about the people who, or the organizations who are the ones who are actually deploying the digital twin, and whether that it serves their interests as well. So it's, you know, it's a theme that's arisen time and time again. So for instance, I mentioned facial recognition algorithms in my presentation, and certainly you know, these were being deployed commercially long before studies were done on whether they for instance discriminated on the basis of race or gender. Now, and the people who were being subjected to decision making, you know, they were pretty much powerless, you know, marginalized communities, whereas the organizations that were deploying the systems, you know, it served their interest to deploy the systems for reasons of, say, operational efficiency. You know, maybe speeded up things very quickly. So it's really that. And you know, this is an issue that goes back over many years. The Tuskegee syphilis study, for instance, was allowed to run for 40 years. You know, in this study, poor Black people were being exploited and harmed. And yeah, it was in the Deep South in Alabama in the 1920s, 1930s. They had no power to say why, that even raised the alarm that they were being harmed, or to have anybody caring about it. You know, it served the government's interests to carry out the studies. So, as well as sort of, you know, I think the relationship between ethics and public trust very much depends as well on who has the power.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know this, Dr. King, you want to say something?
Yeah, but before I say, Dr. Sui, do you want to say the last comments? Because I know that you need to leave soon, so I just want to give you yes.
So Bo, can you remind me the second question?
Sure. The second question about your one sentence definition about of digital twin.
Digital twin. Okay, I think I already said that. I think it's by digital twin. I'm more conservative in that regard. I have the narrower definition in the original sense, more in the CAD tradition, because especially that's what the twin means. So in that regard, Peter, I'm glad you I share Goodchild's concern, because we can never do a complete replica. We can only do a representation. By that always we have to be selective. But you know I just recently visited the shipyard. You know, I met with the aircraft carrier design team in Virginia Beach. They showed me, yeah, they use the digital twins in all different kinds of level. By the way, to design an aircraft carrier takes 8,000 people a decade. To do it, to just finish the design, and then another 25,000 people, 15 years to actually physically build it. So it's really a mind-boggling process. So they have to really calibrate everything. To me, that's the narrower definition of a digital twin. But for the geospatial context, I prefer the term of cyber physical system. So it's a spectrum, but I'm more, I would like to stick to the original definition as it's originally defined in the manufacturing CAD design community. But of course, there are lots of ideas that and techniques that can be transferred to geospatial context.
Yeah. Dan, do you want to also comment on your the idea of a digital twin? Is this a complex digital model or is it not?
I personally think if it includes the model, then it can be, but it really context dependent on the specific domain. So, but that's the issue. I would encourage all the participants of this webinar series to think about it, so that we can come up with a consensus in terms of what we mean. Because that's as I mentioned, that's the impression I got from the Arizona State workshop. You know, everybody has their own definition. It varies wildly. I'm sorry, I have to join the other meeting, but I thank you for inviting me. It's a great conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan, for your participation. Yeah, have a good holidays. I know he's leaving. But now we have more time to discuss those questions in depth. Thank you, Peter and Dr. King, for your flexibility to let Dan to answer all the questions. But now let me switch to you guys. What do you think about these questions? But before that, Peter, I just want to add in one comment about what you mentioned. I really enjoy how you consider the vulnerable populations, how that their voice could be erased in this process. I will also think about whether digital twin is a solution to increase their voice, or digital twin is something make the voice even lower. But now let's switch to Dr. King for his concerns, and answers.
Yes, thank you. So regarding the that topic that we just discussed about this the ethical issues, and I like to provide some applicable evidence about that public interest and then trust. So let me just quickly share my screen. So yeah, I was not able to give a detail, but for example, yeah, I mentioned that I did a survey, and then the dependent variable is whether people approve the idea of collecting street view images by policymakers. And then we found that privacy concerns was not the matter, but actually the perceived benefits and trust in local planning agency. So this indicates that, when we build the digital twins, I think that to, engage more with the local citizens and to make more successful digital twin model, we probably want to emphasize that, this will benefit your community, our community and neighborhood, as well as to promote the trust in the local government who manage those data. But there's, theoretically it's easy, but it's very difficult to, how can we build those kind of trust in local people of the residents in government? So that is something that we need to think about next.
Yeah, Dr. Kim, in fact, there's a question for you in the chat window too. Maybe you want integrate that to your answer.
Oh yeah, so yeah, thank you for the question. So this question is about this AI tool geographic areas, and could you share some insights on what strategies in your view could help address these disparities and make the tools more inclusive and locally relevant? Yeah, so yeah, thank you for the question. And then I think I think the straightforward way to mitigate this issue is, first, I think the important thing is we need to be aware of these issues in geographic bias and disparities in data, existing training data. And then I think the straightforward way to mitigate this issue is we will hope to collect more data. And then instead of probably this is something this is still my half-baked idea, but as a geographer, I think that in geography there's a famous concept of spatial non-stationarity. Although we are aiming at more generalizable, like global model, but we can also need to admit there's some kind of local specific unique context that are different across streets, right? For example, I'm from I did my study at UIUC. It's a small college town, and then here the Blacksburg is also a small college town, but two small college towns are different because UIUC is located in the middle of cornfield and soybean field, and here the location is surrounded by mountain. So those kind of geographic context, topologic landscape is different. So we need to consider they can collect more local data and then more localized at the same time generalized level. That trade-off, that is something my solution. Thank you for the question.
Thank you both. Yeah, the panelists, do you want to further elaborate on your idea about your one sentence definition of digital twin, and also what do your opinion about digital twin? Is that just a digital complex model?
Yeah, so I don't know if I would necessarily want to try and define digital twin. I mean, to me, it's really about a system that can be used in some way to enhance or is intended to enhance the operation of the original, either through being able to model and predict particular proposed interventions, or perhaps in some kind of feedback way. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting as well that maybe actually the conversation about what the definition is actually a conversation where we might also want to think about the ethics that maybe how we define digital twins in itself could have some kind of impact on the ethics of digital twins. Yes. So that's, but I think that's kind of going to be a big kind of ongoing conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me also answer to that question. So we have two questions, right? The one comment is about definition of the digital twin. So for me, I have somewhat that narrow definition, personal narrow definition of digital twin, which is a precise and accurate representation of real world in a digital way. That is my understanding definition of the digital twin. And then regarding the comment mentioned by Dr. Guan, is this comment and question is something that I like to have a discussion with all audiences today, because I realized that several years ago there was some in my home country, which is South Korea, there was a discussion about ubiquitous cities. And then after several years, it becomes about smart cities. And then several years later, it began talking about the digital twin. Yeah, although it's a little bit, the slight thing is different, but the core thing, what I'm observing is very similar. So, yeah, this is something that the big question that I hope to answer and discuss with all the panelists and the moderator and all the audiences today. Yeah, this is something that I cannot easily answer.
Thank you so much. I think for the question also reminds me Ann Butler's early work on the 4 root metaphors, like phenomenon as a structure, as a machine, as a human body, as a stage. So I think people are frequently using different metaphors to kind of helping us better understand the world. Like digital twin is kind of moving from this machine-like model to a human kind of a biophysical model. So yeah, I think this transition is really, really intriguing. So from my perspective. Yeah, any questions from the audience or the panelists? Do you have any comments or further thoughts relevant to the ethics domain of digital twins?
Yeah, another question that comes to my mind is that I know that each of our distinguished speakers already addressed to some degree, which is uncertainty, especially for us who's doing quantitative analysis or information system building. We always want to come up with some kind of uncertainty measurements. So in terms of the ethics and uncertainty, how could we, or maybe if to capture the ethics within the uncertainty quantification aspect?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So sorry. Okay. I'll be quick. So sort of from my point of view, I think part of the issues around uncertainty very much again relate to this idea of whether the term digital twin is misleading and some of the ethical implications of that. So for instance, when we have uncertainties, there's issues, for instance, if say policy decisions are going to be made on the basis of digital twins or in that some form of analysis using digital twins. How do we communicate the uncertainty in the model to the decision makers, the people who might use those analyses to inform policy or decision making? How do we avoid giving them the impression that the digital twin necessarily reflects, is 100% accurate and it, that it reflects that it needs to be handled with care, and also as well, I think thinking about communicating uncertainty to the people who might be affected by these decisions as well, the people who might be subjected to, say, automated decision making if of a digital twin or policy making on the basis of digital twins. So that's just something I wanted to throw in.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts, Peter. So my thoughts on that uncertainty issue, I can share 2 things. The first of all, although this is not directly related to digital twin, but when we think about the uncertainty, I think the one easy example that comes up with my mind is American Community Survey data. So as all geographers, you probably have an opportunity to work on the American Community Survey data, and then it always has the estimate and the margin of error information. And then I consider that as some kind of uncertainty, because ACS data is based on the sampling. There should be some kind of uncertainty issues in the estimate. So then the ACS provides that margin of error information so that users know that this data can be subjected to uncertainty issues. I think that can some kind of similar analogy can be applied to the digital twin model building. And then the important ethical or philosophical concern the approach would be transparency. I think that we all agree, not only the researchers, policymakers, but also the general citizens would understand that we cannot eliminate uncertainties in a 0%. There should be always uncertainty issues, but as long as the policymakers and the model builder, digital twin model builders are approaching these uncertainties with a full transparency in a white paper or the open code, something like that, then I think at least we can reduce this kind of negative consequences, emotional consequences related to the uncertainties from the public side. Yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat window. It's
Yeah,
really
I
for
noticed
everyone about
Joseph has a question from hi Joseph, whose question about, does anyone has any advice for how to encounter and equip faculty in how they could teach about ethics in their courses? Joseph have written about this topic, but would love to hear about your insights. It's a pedagogical issue.
Yeah, okay, I'll just say a couple of words because I know we're getting towards time. But yeah, so I've been teaching a data ethics course as part of the sort of data science education at the University of Illinois. Yeah, it's very challenging, actually. It's a sort of very much sort of an ongoing conversation. There's debate or discussion around whether it should be a standalone course or whether instead you want to integrate ethics into stats courses, computer science courses instead, and how that works. That's clearly and that is a big challenge. It's not just a pedagogical challenge, but it's also an organizational challenge as well. A university model is where faculty are expected to teach a course for the entire semester, for a 15-week semester. And what would that look like if instead I went off to different classes, different other courses, and taught, say, a few weeks of data ethics or once a week? So that there's that kind of logistical challenge as well. And as well, it's also, as I said, the findings from my own research and my students' research is that while people that work on digital twins may be aware of and care about ethical issues, they also see that it's not necessarily an issue, not necessarily their concern or should be their concern. So there's also that kind of barrier of getting students to really want to take these courses or really want to engage in sort of data ethics education and not just see it as some kind of optional extra or an inconvenience.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Let me quickly add on to that. I think there's a fascinating idea. So, for example, my own class, Introduction to GIS course, I discuss, these ethical issues in geospatial data and privacy issues in the almost end of the semester. It's 1 week. So I think particularly the Introduction to GIS course is very helpful. Because that course is not only trained geographers, but also other major students who are using GIS. So it is some kind of generating a good opportunity to generating some this discussion about ethical issues in geospatial data. And the second thing is I like to promote this work by Dr. Dara Sedil from who was the American Geographical Society Fellow several years ago, and her work is actually about this kind of ethical issues in GIS and then education materials. So if you go to ethicalgeo.com or .org by American Geographical Society, you can see some kind of educational videos created by Dr. Dara Sedil. And so then you can use it. I think it's fairly powerful tool, is video. So, and then these days, people are fascinated about the videos rather than text, right? So it's a very easy way to communicate with the students about these ethical issues.
Thank you for the resources and the response. Yeah. Toby, do you have
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming to our 6th Digital Twins webinar series on ethics. And especially thanks to Dr. Zhao for organizing this webinar. And thanks to our distinguished speakers, Dr. Sui, Dr. Dodds, Dr. Kim. It's really very eye-opening for us. For many of us, in fact, ethics has been kind of ignored in the technical side, but this really helps us understand much better. And also, thanks to everyone. It should be a big plus to you. I know that in the universities, many of us are already on a holiday mode, but thank you for spending time with us today. And happy holidays, everyone. And we will continue this webinar series to address like uncertainties, interoperability solutions, and what are the challenges in the coming year.
All right, thank you so much. And I hope you all enjoy a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you
Happy
very much for
holidays.
chairing the session, Dr. Bo Zhao. Yes, and thank you for organizing this event, Dr. Yang. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. It was a great honor to be included.